All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to the Warrior Mindset and Motivation Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Castillo, retired Army Sergeant First Class. I'm here today talking with our special host, our guest. I was going to say host, our guest. He is actually my first non-military person on here, civilian. So you guys know the rule that if it's a civilian, they have to impact the veteran community or the military in a certain way, like in a substantial way, not just, oh, hey, by the way, hi, I support troops. Not saying that that's bad, but I want people to help motivate and influence the veteran community. And that's how I came across Dr. Bradley Nelson. He wrote the book on the emotion code. And I'm not going to get too much into that. I'm going to let him get into that here in a little bit. But a little bit about how this came up. So it kind of started with, I was sitting with my fiance Rachel, I was sitting on the bed, and I was trying to, because I like to try to plan ahead on who I'm going to have come on the show. So I'm sitting there, and she's like, hey, why don't you have Dr. Brad come on? And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's a cool idea. We could do that. So I go on there, and I write it on the Facebook, and I send the message, good lengthy message. Cool, sent, got it, done. Now, I'm wait a couple days, message wasn't seen yet, and I was like, dang it, okay. So being that I was a sergeant first class in the Army, I was a platoon sergeant, and we're very resourceful. And if something doesn't work, we find another way. So that's what I did. So I said, okay, let me try a different way. I went into my Army mind, and I was like, okay, you know what? I see, oh, he's got a daughter. I'm going to write her because she's very active on Facebook. So I wrote her, sent her a message. Boom, the message was seen and sent. And I was like, all right, sweet. So now I'm waiting for her to respond. So she writes me back and says, oh, hey, this is a great thing you're doing and stuff. After I gave a little background about the podcast. And then we exchanged a couple of stuff, thanking me for my service and stuff. And she's very nice, by the way, very respectful. Gave me the email to Dr. Brad's assistant. And then after I emailed her, I waited about a day or so. And then I got a response back, and I was like, sweet. Then she sent me a link to get the interview set up. And I had to explain kind of like a pitch on, hey, I think this is why Dr. Brad would be good to come on the podcast show because of his program that he has for Save a Soldier program and what the emotion code has done for veterans, including myself. And I'll cover that later on in the podcast on what it's done for me. And then after that, boom, here we are. I have the man who wrote the emotion code here on Facebook Live, YouTube. It'll be uploaded to Instagram, all this stuff. So Dr. Nelson, if you want to go ahead and give everyone a little bit of a background about yourself, because it's very extensive and very lengthy, which is awesome. You've done so much stuff. And if you want to go ahead and let everybody know about yourself, go ahead.
Well, I guess I'm getting old. That's why I've done so much stuff. Thanks, Eric. It's really great to be here. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to connect with the veteran community. It started off really that, well, let me back up a little bit. I became a chiropractor, graduated in 1988, went into practice for myself. And it was really an answer to prayer for me to go into the healing arts. And when I say that, I say that literally. It really was an answer to prayer that I got. And when I got into practice, I developed this habit. Before I would work on somebody, I would just take a moment and ask God to help me with that person. And it was a totally private, totally personal habit. Nobody ever knew that I was doing that. But that was a really pivotal, important piece of the puzzle for me, because when you ask for help, then you get that help. And so I was also trying to learn everything that I could from any place that I could. I was studying ancient methods of healing and modern methods and learning everything I could from every place that I could, because my patients that were coming to me wanted help and I wanted to help them. So I saw people that were of all ages and that had all kinds of things going on. They had PTSD, they had depression, anxiety, phobias, panic attacks, eating disorders, self-sabotage of all kinds. They had the typical things that people see a chiropractor for, like migraine headaches and neck pain and back pain and so on. But I was also working with people who had infertility and asthma, digestive disorders and so on. And so it really ran the gamut. Well, what I found was that all of my patients had something in common. And what they had in common was something that I came to call emotional baggage. Now, we've often used that phrase, right? I mean, you probably used that phrase before, right, Eric?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, we usually use that phrase when we're talking about somebody else. You know, man, that guy's got a lot of emotional baggage. The thing is, we all have emotional baggage. But here's how this works, okay? We're just now really beginning to understand and comprehend how this really functions in our body. So think about this. Your body, even though maybe you might weigh 180 pounds or 220 or whatever, you look at your hand and that hand is solid, and you slap it down on the desk and it makes a nice thunk sound. So our bodies seem very solid to us and very 3D, and they are. But what quantum physicists have been telling us for over 100 years now is that our bodies are really made of empty space, and it's hard for us to really wrap our minds around. But some quantum physicists recently figured out that if you could take all the empty space out of every single person's body on Earth, you could put all 7.8 billion of us into a little box the size of a sugar cube, and we would all fit in there, and you could even put more people in there than that. So these bodies are literally made of energy, and they're almost entirely empty space. Well, think about this. When you go to get an X-ray, okay, what are they doing? Well, they're actually, X-ray is a form of light. It's on that electromagnetic spectrum. So when they're shining an X-ray at your body, they're shining a light at you, essentially, a light that is so bright, really so intense, you can't see it. It's invisible to these eyes. But what it does is it goes right through your body, and it makes a shadow. Your bones make a shadow. They make shadows on the film, and that's how the X-ray actually works. Well, so here's what happens. When you're feeling an intense emotion, when something has just happened, maybe you've just lost someone close to you, or maybe something really horrific has happened. Maybe you've done something that's going to haunt you in your dreams for the rest of your life. The emotional energy that you're feeling, the grief, the anger, the resentment, the fear, the panic, whatever it might be, that is actually an energy that you're feeling. It's a vibration. You see, every emotion has its own specific frequency. Now, just bear with me. Think about this. Everything in the universe is energy. Okay, our bodies are energy, thoughts are energy, emotions are energy. So when you're feeling an intense emotion, whatever it might be, what's going on a quantum level in your body is that you are vibrating at the rate now of that emotion, that frequency. So to give you an idea what this can do, okay, I had a guy that came into me many years ago. He had really severe back pain, low back pain. It was a 9 on a 0 to 10 scale, 10 being, go to the ER. And he's a 9. And so I started doing some testing with him using the emotion code and found that he had what we call a trapped emotion, some emotional baggage. The emotion we identified was anger. And I traced it back using muscle testing, which is how we get information from the subconscious. It's actually a very simple process. And I traced it back that this had occurred 20 years before. And he said, oh yeah, he said, I know what that's about. It was a work situation. He was falsely accused of something, and he was really, really angry about it. And that emotion was so powerful that it became trapped in his body. Now, when an emotional energy becomes trapped in the body, it's like a little ball, okay, a little invisible ball, in this case of anger, if you can imagine, right? So this energy is affecting his low back. What these trapped emotions do, and we all have these, what they do is they distort the normal energy field of the body. And that's all the body is. Now listen, there are many, many doctors all over the world who have said energy medicine is the future. It's the future of healing, right? It's the next thing that's coming, and it's already here. But what happened with this guy, he's really angry. His body can't really process that emotion totally, and so that energy becomes trapped in his body. So now he's got this ball of anger. And I know that's a strange concept, but just bear with me. So I released that trapped emotion of anger by just putting a magnet down his back a few times. Instantly, that energy was gone. And guess what else was gone? The back pain was instantly gone. And he can't believe it. And he's bending over and he's twisting this way and that way and exclaiming. And it's like a miracle. And I was grateful that it worked so well. Now think about this. If you're in pain right now, 90% chance that pain is actually being caused by some emotional baggage that you've picked up somewhere along the line. And that might sound strange, but I'm telling you, we've got 7,000 practitioners in 80 countries around the world now. We're all finding the same thing. I've been finding the same thing now for 32 years, okay? That's just how the body works, okay? Most of the pain we have is due to emotional baggage. So here's the other thing that's interesting, and let me explain why. This guy, think about this. He had this ball of anger in his low back. It's distorting the energy field in his low back. And when you distort the energy field of the body continually, 24/7 for years and years, things start to go wrong. And pain is one of the things that manifests, because the area of tissue that is within that sphere of energy is constantly feeling that emotion of anger 24/7. And there's this distorting force. So the chemical reactions in that area, they're being affected to some degree. The blood flow, the lymph flow, the flow of acupuncture meridian energy, all that's being affected to some degree. And so that's why these things cause physical pain. But they have another effect on us, okay? And here's what happened. 2 days later, this guy comes back in to see me. And he said, Dr. Nelson, my back pain is still gone. He said, I still can't quite believe it. That was really unbelievable, really miraculous. But he said, when I came in here, he said, I had another problem I didn't tell you about. He said, for as long as I can remember, I've basically been what you'd call a rageaholic. He said, I'm always yelling at my wife and my kids. I got to watch the road rage. He said, I've been to anger management several times. It hasn't really helped me. But he said, since you removed that trapped emotion of anger from me, I really feel different. He said, things that used to set me off don't set me off anymore. I feel kind of just relaxed and kind of peaceful. And he said, I really feel different. He said, how did you do that? And at the time I said, well, I really don't know. But think of it this way. And this is cutting right to the heart of how the emotion code works. And it's a strange concept. Most of us, we're all so used to drugs and surgery and so on in Western medicine. And sometimes those are the things we need. But there's another thing going on. Think about this guy. He's got this ball of anger in his low back. And after 20 years, it's so bad, he's 1 point away from going to the ER and ultimately getting surgery on this thing. And we released it by just clearing that one emotion, that one trapped emotion of anger. But think about this. Why was he kind of a rageaholic, and why did that change? Well, in his life, when a situation would come along in his life where somebody would cut him off in traffic or whatever might happen, he would become angry. Why? He would very easily become angry because part of his body was feeling that emotion of anger, that frequency, that vibration of anger, because he had that trapped emotion in his low back. So he would fall into that resonance, that frequency much more easily than he otherwise would, see? And so when that emotional energy was found and released, suddenly that area of tissue can breathe, finally, a sigh of relief, but also it changed how he was feeling. And we've seen many, many cases like this over the years, and working with some veterans and seeing how powerful this is and the change that this can make with PTSD symptoms was what motivated me when I got out of practice and in 2004 and published the emotion code for the first time in 2007, that we started a program called the Save a Soldier program. And the idea there was that anybody could, that we would supply a free ebook, a free copy of the emotion code to anybody who was dealing with any kind of a PTSD symptom. And so that program went on for a number of years, and there were a lot of books went out, a lot of copies went out, and this was open to anybody anywhere in the world. It didn't matter, didn't have to necessarily be service members from the U.S. But that program worked, and we've had a lot of success stories that have been generated all over the world from people who have been dealing with PTSD. And in fact, we just completed a study on PTSD. The results of that are going to be published really soon, but I believe we found a 41% improvement rate in PTSD, self-reported PTSD symptoms within about 3 weeks of using the emotion code, specifically to work on the heart. And we'll probably talk about that in a minute.
Right. And I know for me personally, I experienced this emotion code and body code a year ago when I first met Rachel, and I wasn't sure how to process it because of the military. You know, you have to see it to believe it because we go off of facts, we go off of black and white, and it's basically like intel. We're not going to go into a place where there's next to no intel unless we absolutely have to. And it's like where it's like literally like a national security type deal where we have to do it. So when I did this, I had it was a very powerful and very almost like draining at the same time. And I'll explain why it was draining in a minute. I was going through the body and emotion code, and I was laying there and she was working on me. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I started getting flashbacks. And for those who know, for people with PTSD flashbacks, you know, you get glimpses and images of things and they kind of become overbearing and they become very overwhelming. And I would get those. It wasn't too often, but they would happen from time to time and they just kind of pop in there. But this time it was different because as I would get a flashback coming in, I wouldn't feel a sense of overwhelm because I was in like a meditative state at the same time because she just told me to relax and lay down and close my eyes. So I was kind of like almost like in a, not like a purgatory, but I was in the kind of just like in that deep meditative state. And I was seeing these situations, these scenarios, and some of the few very disturbing things that I had to experience while deployed to combat. But it would pop up and it would almost play like a little short film, and then it would just fade and go away. And then the next one would happen. It would play and then it would fade and then it would go away. And this went on for about 45, 50 minutes. And some of them played again. And I chalk it up now as like, well, there was still something there that needed to make itself known. That's why it's playing back again. But it was like turning a page. It was like reading a story and then turning a page. And after about the 45 minutes of doing all of that, I felt very tired, very like almost like a drowsy drunk because it was just so much that I could barely walk. And mind you, this is all on like our second date too. So like we had barely just started dating, and she went into town. Like she was like, you know what? We're gonna get this, and we're gonna help you. So like she really did a number on me, you know. And she was like helping me off of her massage table because this was still in her business before COVID happened. And she like helped me off of the table. I was like barely walking. I didn't know what was happening. My head I felt lighter, but like I couldn't walk. My body felt like it was confused ever. And mind you, this was like at 8 o'clock at night, 8:30 at night or something like that. And at this time I was living down in I believe I was in Salem, living with my best friend at the time because I didn't have a place to stay. I was almost homeless. And she was like, no, she's like, you're just going to sleep at my house, you know, because there's no way I'm letting you drive. And I was just like, what? I could drive. You know, I felt like I was just like, like I drank a bunch of alcohol. So like I ended up sleeping at her house. And then we talked about all of this stuff afterwards. And like I just explained, I explained everything afterwards. It's like even when I got to her house, like I laid down and I was out. It was just sleep. There was nothing for me to do. It's just I just passed out. I just like I don't even remember coming into her house. That's how much stuff was released from me. And then that's when I kind of was like, okay, I don't know what's happening. I don't understand it. Like you need to explain what you did because I don't know. I feel a lot better. And at that time, I was still part of the Veterans Treatment Court here in Oregon, in Hillsborough, in Washington County. And even they were seeing like, what happened to you? Like, you know, you were kind of like on edge, you know, and then after about because I would have to go there every other week. So after about 2 weeks, they were like, Eric, what have you done? And I was like, I didn't do anything, you know, and they're like, no, you've done something because you're not on edge. You're not ready to like attack someone and go on defense mode, you know, or ready just to pounce on someone when they speak. And I was like, well, this is going to sound crazy when I say this, but you know, and I explained to them the whole thing. I gave them the pamphlet to Rachel's business, a Zimi Wellness Center in Indigenous Sovereignty, which I'm actually a certified life coach now, and I work with her now there. So now you can get like a double package. You can work with me and you can work with Rachel now doing that stuff. But they were like, okay, what is this? We might have to explore this, because if they could take someone like you and completely turn them around, you know, we might want to explore this some more. And I'm actually going to be talking with them here in a couple of weeks to try to introduce this into the Veterans Treatment Court system, to where they'll work with Rachel and I exclusively, and we'll work with those veterans one-on-one, and they'll get coaching and healing from both of us, since I was in the program, and that's what that program is lacking.
That's fantastic.
They don't have that. So like, I think this would actually help them. And a lot of the guys, you know, they have alcohol problems, they have drug problems. There was a couple of guys like me who didn't have either. It was just PTSD and triggered. And that's what happened. There was like one or two guys that were in there with that same modality. And then one of my buddies now, good friend of mine, that I met him in one of the other classes I was going through, his name's Dylan. He's going to be going into that same treatment program, and I know that'll help him too, because he was a Marine, and he's gone through some things, and I know this stuff will help him also. But once I saw that, I was like, oh, Save a Soldier program. I started reading it and stuff. I actually have the book and I read it. Some of the stuff I'm still kind of like, because my military brain is like, okay, I can't physically see what's going on here, you know. So my military mind sometimes is like, and I'm like, no, stop it, because it works. Leave it alone. You know, and then it's like, okay, you know, that's fine. And then also what kind of worked with that too, and it's kind of like a double, her mom actually kind of jumped in on this thing too, and her sister. So I was kind of getting it 3 different ways here at one point. I would get double teamed with Rachel doing her vibrational sound therapy with sound bowls from Tibet. And then her mom would be working on me with emotion code. And that's a whole nother draining. I was even more drained doing that the first time than Rachel working on me by herself. So like, that was a whole nother thing, you know? So like, bringing all this stuff to the veteran community, I think would be great. And I know you wanted to talk about, you mentioned a heart wall, and I had mine released, and that was, I don't even know how to explain that part. Again, it's just, I just know, like, I feel like it feels like my chest was lighter almost. Like it was just kind of just like a, you know, like whatever that was. It felt like, I guess to compare, it felt like I took off my heavy ass rucksack after a 12-mile road march, and I just took the clips off and it just fell off, which is what we do afterwards. There's like these little buttons and clips, and you unclip them and the rucksack just falls off. That's what it felt like after doing that. So if you want to touch on what that is, so that way some of these vets here can understand what's going on with that part, how that ties in and helping overall also with that. Absolutely.
Well, you know, it's hopefully you're sitting down, because what we're going to be talking about here is really cutting edge information, and it really goes back to the 1960s when doctors first started doing heart transplants. It didn't take long before people who had had a transplant would come back to the doctor, and they would report these strange things. They would say how, you know, my taste in food has really changed. Now I crave this certain kind of food. Or they would say, you know, I used to not really care about sports, but now all of a sudden, since I got this new heart, I'm a huge baseball fan. I go to all the games. I think about it all the time. Or they would say, you know, my handwriting has totally changed now since I got the heart transplant. Can you explain that? In every case, when these people were connected with the families of the heart donors, what they would find is, well, yes, that's our son's handwriting that you have. And how is that possible? That's really weird. Or they would say, yeah, our daughter was a big baseball fan, and now you are too, but you weren't before. How strange is that? Sometimes people would even inherit with that heart, they would have memories of being in places that they never in their lives had ever visited. And they would find out when they connected with the family of the donor, well, yes, our daughter used to go to Rome every year, and now you have memories of being there? Well, those must be her memories. I mean, I'm telling you, this is fascinating stuff, and there are whole books written about this. It's called Cellular Memory. Well, the ancient peoples believed the heart was the seat of the soul and the source of love and creativity and romance, and really the core of our being. And in the West, we've never really given any credence to those old ideas. We've just thought that that was just poetic license on the part of those ancient peoples, because we know that the heart is just a pump. But it wasn't until the 1970s that they discovered that the heart is actually full of gray matter and white matter, which is what the brain is made of. And then they did a study, and they were looking at the nerves that carry information from the brain to the heart. They were looking at those nerves and actually measuring the activity level. And what they found was the vast majority of the messages were actually traveling not from the brain to the heart, but from the heart to the brain, indicating that the brain that is in our heads is obeying the messages that's being sent by the brain that is in our hearts. So think about this. Have you ever had a time in your life where you felt like your heart was being broken? You ever felt like, were you ever really feeling deeply hurt or deeply grieved about something? And those physical sensations that we refer to as heartache or heartbreak, those are very real. And it can feel like there's an elephant sitting on your chest, or like you're choking, like you can't breathe. When you're feeling those kinds of feelings, your heart is really under assault. And so what will happen is, in most cases, the subconscious mind will start to build a wall around your heart to protect your heart from being totally broken, because the heart is the core of who you are, right? And it's a very delicate organ. It needs to be protected. So what we find is that 93% of people have put up a wall like this around their heart. Now, of course, as veterans, so many of you are well aware of combat and the symptoms of combat and post-traumatic stress, but it isn't just from combat that you can get post-traumatic stress symptoms or build a heart wall, right? And so one of the very first people that came into my office after we discovered this heart wall phenomenon was a 38-year-old nurse. And as I was talking with her, she told me she'd come in to see me because of this severe neck pain that she had, that she'd seen a couple of doctors for, and they hadn't been able to help her. So as I was talking with her, she told me that she was 38 and she was single, and she was going to be single the rest of her life. She was never going to date again, she said. She hadn't dated in 8 years. And she was dead serious, and she was an attractive person. And I said, well, why do you feel that way? Why are you going to be single the rest of your life? That seems kind of unusual. And she said that 8 years before, she was really deeply in love with this guy who dumped her and broke her heart. Well, I checked her, and she had this heart wall that had been put up. Now, this wall, it's almost like a force field. It's an energy that is made from these layers of emotional baggage. And so I checked her. She had this wall around her heart, 3 emotions making up this wall, 3 layers. Each of those emotions had gotten trapped in her body when she went through the breakup 8 years before. And so I started releasing these, and it just took probably 10 minutes to release these 3 layers. And all of a sudden, that last emotion was gone. That wall around her heart was gone. And all of a sudden, the neck pain, gone, completely gone. And she was thrilled and left the office feeling fine. And I didn't see her again for 3 months. And when she came back in, I'll always remember this. I saw her in the hallway, and I said, hey, I haven't seen you for a while. How are you? What's going on? She said, my neck has been fine since I was here. But she said, you cleared that heart wall for me. And that really works. Because she said, about 2 weeks after I was here, I found out my childhood sweetheart has been living right around the corner from me for almost 8 years. And we're dating. And we're in love. And I think he's going to ask me to marry him. And I thought, wow, what a shift, right?
Right.
Yeah. So there are so many interesting stories. We have about 10,000 of these, but just a couple. This is from a woman named Danae Herring. She said, about 3 years ago, my boyfriend Michael and I were hiking in Devil's Lake in Wisconsin. He fell 85 feet straight down off of a cliff. He miraculously made it and healed physically at the hospital, but it was clear to me he had emotional scarring from the accident. In regards to myself, I also walked away with severe anxiety and PTSD. This is when I was introduced to the emotion code. I immediately connected with it and dove in headfirst by reading the book in a couple of days and then beginning my healing journey. With the emotion code, I have eased Michael's panic attacks, lessened his anxiety, and helped him refrain from getting extremely overwhelmed and stressed during daily life. For myself, my anxiety is almost non-existent, and I no longer suffer from PTSD that the accident caused. So there are many stories like this, and we have stories where, for example, one of the stories I was trying to find, but I couldn't find it here. There's so many of these to sift through. But it was written by a woman who wrote about her husband, who came back from a tour of duty over there in, I believe, in Afghanistan. And he was not the same guy. Major PTSD symptoms, depression, anxiety, easily triggered by all kinds of things, loud noises in the night, the whole thing. And he was just not the same guy that left. And went on the tour. And so she started working with him using the emotion code. And she wrote a wonderful story about how it's all just melted away for him. And the beauty of this is that it's not a drug. I mean, drugs can help temporarily, and it's a godsend, I'm sure, that we have them. But, I've met veterans myself that have been on 14, 15 different medications. When you get on more than 3 medications, you have no idea what the drug interactions are really going to be. And all of those things are really just suppressing the symptoms of PTSD. But those symptoms are there because that's your subconscious mind trying to tell you there's something else that needs to be done. There's something else wrong. There's baggage that needs to be released. So that experience that you had, Eric, that you shared is just a beautiful example of how this can easily take the charge out of those events that you went through. And that's really what this does. You can think of it that way. It's like taking the electrical charge out of things, the energetic, emotional charge out of those experiences so that the memories are still there. If you think about things, you can remember. It's not like we're removing your memories. It's just taking the charge out of those things so that they don't bother you anymore. And that's really what this is about. So the heart wall, everybody that I have seen that has been dealing with PTSD to any intense level always has a heart wall. And when that wall starts to be taken down, then we start to see some major shifts happen. We just did a study recently that's going to be published soon where within about 3 weeks time of working on having a person get worked on and having that heart wall taken down, people were reporting 41% improvement within 3 weeks of their PTSD symptoms specifically. And so we're starting to get the data now to back up what we're doing. And it is a very, very different kind of healing. It's not drugs and it's not surgery, but if you're tired of taking drugs to suppress your symptoms, then this is really something that you need to take a look at because it's actually really, really simple. And even children can do it. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, and it's true. And I know for Rachel's mom actually was the one that started working on my heart wall, and they're all Native American, so they have the way that they do things. And she was actually able to tell me what was blocking my heart actually. And she has this funny laugh when she comes across something. It's like a very, very infectious laugh. And she's like, Eric, and she's laughing and she's like, do you know what's in front of your heart? And she's like, I'm like, no. And she's like, well, what was your job again in the Army? And I was like, well, I was a field artilleryman, a cannon crew member. And she just starts laughing. And I was like, what? And she's like, well, there is literally battalions and battalions and battalions of tanks in front of your heart. They're stacked super high. They are so far. And she's just like, this is going to take some work. She's like, you just like Fort Knox. You don't want anyone getting close to your heart. And I was like, I didn't even really realize it until she said that, just because of how my heart was crushed, a couple of times. And I was like, well, I guess. And it took a few. It didn't happen like all in one go. It took a couple of sessions to do. And it was actually Rachel who kind of cleared out the rest of the tanks, if you will, because there was just a couple left. And it was her that cleared them out. And it's just the sense of just like how you were talking about, just the relaxation and just how everything's just not as charged. And the memories are still there. Yeah. And those aren't going to go away. And sometimes, especially for veterans, even though the charge isn't there, sometimes just depending if something catches you off guard, the charge will like plug it in a phone. It's like boom, and you get that instant charge. But the difference is now it doesn't sit there anymore, unless it's something completely that is like untreated. And I actually had an incident to where it was on the 6th of July, and I'm good with fireworks. I don't have a problem with them, unless there's like kind of like caught off guard a little bit. And I had two of them actually. Two things happened. And I'll give both examples. This is before emotion code, and then I'll give one after. So I was 4th of July, I believe it was 2019, maybe. I got to go home to California, and we were sitting there. I was with my family and stuff, and my stepfather, well, ex-stepfather, we still talk and stuff. He has like these air pistols, like with little yellow rubber airsoft guns, and I was kind of shooting them, we were all having fun playing around. And this was on the 4th of July, but it was daytime outside, and we were shooting like cans and stuff. And I was like, oh, let me see. And I was like hitting all the cans. They're like, hey, it's not fair. You do this for a living. Da, da, da. And they were all like teasing me and stuff. And then out of nowhere, it was like one of the loud, it was like an M80 or something, a loud boom happened. And I completely shifted. I stopped. I turned to where the noise was going, and I had both air pistols pointed, and I was walking in the direction of where the sound came from, about halfway through the yard. And then I kind of stopped, and I was like, shook my head, and I was like, yeah, and I turned around and I looked at everybody, and everyone was like frozen looking at me, Boy. Yeah. And I had like two pistols in my hand. They looked real, even though they were airsoft guns. Yeah. And they were all looking at me, and I was like, sorry, I was like, my bad. Yeah. I didn't realize what was going on. And then to kind of crack the ice a little bit, my stepfather goes, well, if someone wants to come over here, they're going to be in a world of hurt because they're going to mess them up, Yeah. So that's kind of what happened there. And it took a long time to kind of come down from that mode. So for like the rest of that day, I was kind of on edge, kind of just, I pushed the air pistols aside because I didn't want to have that happen again. But I was constantly, now I'm looking at the doors, I'm looking at the yard, I'm all over, I'm on high alert now. Yeah. Now this past 4th of July, 2020, I was here in Vancouver with Rachel, and no problems. 4th of July was great. We watched them. Now 6th of July comes around. I'm outside with my service dog, Kenobi, and all of a sudden it was like a loud boom that happened again. Except this time, everything completely shifted and changed. I felt like I wasn't even in the backyard, and I started taking like a precaution of where we have this big bush, and it kind of curls around the corner to the back to the shed. So I was kind of like, I went into that mode, and even my dog was right next to me. So he at one point, he was even acting like a military working dog at one point. And I was against the bush, and I'm looking, and I'm peeking over, and it's like I'm fizzling in and out between desert environment and backyard. Rachel's inside. She kind of knows what's going on, but doesn't want to come out. And I found this after. She didn't come out because she didn't want to be caught in anything until everything kind of died down. And I look over, and I'm pretty sure I saw like a black silhouette figure kind of thing. And I went over and I looked again, and I looked at my dog, and I was like, here we go. And I went around the bush, and I charged after it through the little narrow backyard, and then it like vanished. It like completely disappeared. And I was like, I kind of stopped, and I was like, and I went to grab it by like its neck. So I reached out to grab it, and it's like I grabbed nothing, and it disappeared. And I kind of walked back, and I was kind of outside still walking, and I was still kind of whatever, not really sure what was happening. And then my dog, he picked up, and then what he does is to kind of snap me out of it. He goes completely insane. He starts running around. He starts jumping at my leg. He starts jumping at my chest to kind of snap me out of that mode.
Your dog.
And it snapped me out of that mode. Took about a couple of minutes because he was like running around the yard and he'd like jump on me. And I'm like, what the heck, like, and then it kind of like jarred me out of that state of mind. And after a couple of minutes, that's when Rachel came outside and she's like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I just didn't expect any of that. So it's just, I thought I was good, but I was not. And we actually had to go do some work on that to kind of just release that. And even from my dog too, because I know you can work on animals as well.
You can.
So, and he absorbs a lot from me energetically. So like she had to work on him, so that way he can be focused on me. And it was just to show that, like, this is to highlight the fact that it does work. It's just there will always be a situation to where you're not prepared for, and that's when you have to go do the extra work. And that's what we did. And it's like, now once doing all that stuff, I didn't have anything specific like that happen in a combat environment to where I was on an alley, and none of that happened. But that was just something that I prepared for mentally that could have happened. So it's not the fact that it didn't happen. And in a veteran's mind, we go through those different scenarios. We go through like, okay, well, what about this? Okay, so if this happens, I gotta do this. If this happens, and we play through all these things in our head, and we do them as leaders as we plan. Now, 9 out of 10 of those don't happen. But what I was doing was I created a scenario in my head when I was deployed back in 2004 that could have happened, that never did, not even close. But it was just a scenario that we had to cover. So I replayed that, and because of now doing emotion code work with Rachel and her mom and her sister, and now being able to understand why that happened, where before it was just more like oh well, it's just a whatever. Now being able to connect those dots, I'm able to get the right help. And at that point too, like and it's not just that, like in that mode, you got to have someone there who can kind of reel you back in a little bit. And that's what Rachel did. She had to remind me what day it was, where I was at. I'm outside, Kenobi's right next to me. And she had to do a whole bunch of things to remind me that I wasn't in the military anymore, and that I was actually here on U.S. soil and not in a foreign land. So that took some time too. Right. So like now when you incorporate all that stuff together, so now once you go through something, you know how to deal with it. So now if that were to happen again, almost bet to believe 9.9 out of 10 that exact situation won't happen again, because I've already dealt with that.
Right. Well, the interesting thing about these trapped emotions is that as you release them, you eventually get to a point where it's almost like stepping out of this old suit that you've been wearing, and you step into this new state of being that's much closer to who you really were intended to be, or in many cases, who you used to be before you went through all of the trauma. And so, yeah, it's exciting stuff. Let me share a story with you. This is from a woman named Carol. She said, I worked with a Bosnian woman named Nermina, who was having pain and anxiety as a result of PTSD from experiencing and living through the war in Bosnia. She had many nightmares and flashbacks. After doing the emotion code with her, we were able to release many of the trapped traumatic memories from her body. She's become so much more self-aware and peaceful. Her nightmares have stopped, and she has less pain. We're still working on her headaches. But so, this isn't something that you do one time. However, every trapped emotion that you release is gone permanently. And sometimes the results of that can be really dramatic. And even kids can do this. There was a woman that told me this story that I'll share with you guys. She said that she bought the emotion code book and the book on audio and started reading it and listening to it. And her son picked it up and he started reading it and listening to it. And he started practicing with his friends, and she didn't pay much attention. But a couple of weeks later, the phone rang And she answered the phone, and the woman on the other end of the phone line identified herself as the mother of one of this woman's son's friends. And she said, listen, she said, my son has a severe phobia of water. And you can have a phobia to anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she said he's had it all of his life. And we've tried everything to fix it. We've taken him to everybody we can think of. Nothing has ever helped this. She said, right now, I'm at the community pool. She said, my son is out playing in the water with the other boys for the first time in his whole entire life. She said, your son did this. How is this even possible? What in the world is he doing? And those two boys are only 11 years old, see? So that's how easy this can be.
Right.
And, you know, we all have emotional baggage, but if you've been through, you know, if you've been on a tour of duty and you've experienced things that most people don't have to experience, then there's emotional baggage there that most people don't have. But you can find that baggage and you can release that baggage. And like you were saying, you know, just you can jettison that pack and you feel lighter. And that's one of the things people often report when they get this work done. They often say, yeah, you know what, I feel a lot lighter now. And in fact, my favorite story there was one of our practitioners went to a woman's house to work on her. And she ended up working on her little boy, who I think was 10. And as soon as she got done working on him, he got up and he bolted out of the room. And he came back a minute later and with this puzzled look on his face. And his mom said, are you okay? And he said, well, I don't understand. He said, I weighed myself this morning and I know exactly how much I weighed then. And he said, I know I need to be at least 10 pounds lighter now. But he said, I weigh exactly the same. And he couldn't figure it out.
This is pretty good.
Right.
So as we bring this up to wrap it up here, if there was Dr. Brad, if there's a message for veterans that you want to leave with the veterans here, the veteran community, what message you want to leave for them in regards to this specific healing modality right here?
Well, I'll try to do this and not get emotional. My whole life and all the experiences that I've had in my life have brought me to this point to be able to share this information with the world. This information, the emotion code, it's coming down as a gift, really, to you, because there is so much that you can do. You know, every man, woman, and child on this planet has the ability to heal, to do a lot of healing for themselves. Unfortunately, we're living now in a system where we're conditioned and propagandized really to believe that that only drugs can help us. But I'm telling you right now, energy medicine is the future, and the easiest and simplest form of energy medicine that's ever been devised is this emotion code. And I'd love to take credit for it, but it just came through me because we all have a Father in heaven who loves us and who wants us to be well and wants us to be healthy. And these PTSD symptoms are caused by emotional baggage, by trapped emotions. And so if you're dealing with them, please take a look at this. You can go to discoverhealing.com. And you can, right at the top there, you can download our emotion code starter kit. Gives you the first couple of chapters of the book. You can, of course, get it on Audible. You can get it on Amazon. It's available in all of the bookstores and so on. But just to have an open enough mind to check this out, because we are seeing such amazing results with this, with PTSD. And so when opportunity knocks, you want to answer that. And if you're dealing with these symptoms, I'm telling you right now, in as little as a month or so, your whole life can really be in a new place. And it can be, you can do this yourself. You can do this yourself. You can work on yourself if you want. I mean, I think the book is maybe $20 or so. You can get the book on Audible, listen to the book. You'll learn how to do this yourself, and you can do this yourself and not have to spend any money really except just getting the book. Now, If you want to have someone work with you, that's totally fine. We have people in 80 countries around the world. And by the way, this work is done at a distance as well as live and in person. It works the same because it's true energy medicine. So there's really no barrier of distance. And it also works with animals. And that's a great proof of this work, that it does work with animals. They experience emotions and they develop emotional baggage. And so you can help your pets and your animals as well. So my advice is just be open, try this out, and it may just really amaze you how powerful this is. So thank you for listening. It's such an honor really for me to speak to all of you. And I want to thank you for all of your, for all the service and all the sacrifice that you've given this great country. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brad. That was perfect, the way that was said. For those guys and girls, veterans, I'm telling you off of firsthand experience. I'm here, when I probably shouldn't have been. So take a look at it. You can reach out to me, and I can put you in contact with Rachel. She does it. She works with me. If you want her to work with you, and she digs deep, and we'll pull the stuff out of you. And we'll pull things out and just get really, really deep in there and pull those trapped emotions out and kind of put you at ease with some of the stuff that you guys go through. So you can reach out to me, or you can reach out to Rachel directly, or you can get the book like Dr. Brad said and do it yourself. He explains everything step by step, or as we say in the military, Barney style, by the numbers, how to do it. Very simple on how it goes. So again, everybody, thanks for watching this here. I put the link for Discover Healing down there on the banner at the bottom. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, like this page, share this page. It's also on YouTube as well. It's on Zimi Wellness Center's Facebook page and their YouTube page. It's all around. So just share, if anything, share this video. If you know a veteran, share this video with them, have them watch this, and then have them get in touch with me or someone, so that way we can help, because we're only as strong as our weakest link. And in the veteran community, 22 a day is too much, and we need to go ahead, we need to knock that number down. So Dr. Brad, thank you for coming on and speaking today, explaining what emotion code is and the Save a Soldier program, and kind of just being available and allowing this platform and allowing me to speak as well on some of my experiences also. Thank
you, Eric. Thanks for having me on.
All right, everybody. See you guys next week. Tune in to who we'll have next week. You'll just have to wait and see. So everybody, have a good day. Again, Dr. Brad, thank you for coming on.
Thanks so much.
All right. See you guys.